Carolina Journal News Hour on News Talk 1110 and 99.3 WBT. Also streaming live on the Carolina Journal YouTube channel. My name is Nick Craig. Thanks for starting your morning with us. Well, we start off this morning with big-time controversy here in North Carolina's governor race. Republican North Carolina Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson is apparently under pressure from members of his own party to drop out of the state's gubernatorial race. That's according to reporting that broke yesterday over at CarolinaJournal.com. This is all ahead of a CNN report that was published yesterday afternoon that claimed that he made lewd and divisive comments on a pornographic website. CNN reported that Robinson posted frequently on the website between the years 2008 and 2012 before he was involved in politics here in the state. The comments, which in most cases are too sexual in nature for me to even repeat on the air this morning, have the lieutenant governor on defense. However, Mark Robinson claims, well, the story is fake.
A story leaked by him to CNN is appearing now. Let me reassure you, the things that you will see in that story, those are not the words of Mark Robinson. You know my words, you know my character, and you know that I have been completely transparent in this race and before.
That's the lieutenant governor in a video that was posted to X yesterday afternoon, about an hour or so before the CNN exclusive story broke. In regards to pressure to drop out of the race, well, this is what the lieutenant governor says.
We are staying in this race. We are in it to win it. And we know that with your help, we will.
The deadline for the lieutenant governor, if he did decide to drop out of the race, would have been 11:59 p.m. last night. And as of this morning, the lieutenant governor is still in the race. However, controversy still brewing. We'll have more details with Carolina Journal's Donna King coming up for you in less than 2 minutes. Pro-Palestinian protesters on Thursday afternoon spray painted the ROTC Armory building at the University of Chapel Hill. They tore down an American flag and vandalized other buildings on campus. This in the latest edition of Chaos on College Campuses. The group's Student for Justice in Palestine claimed responsibility for the protest and the destruction and vandalism, claiming, quote, "The student movement is protesting UNC's refusal to divest from the apartheid regime and genocidal campaign being inflicted against the Palestinians by the Zionist regime. Until UNC ends its complacency in genocide, the student movement shall continue to organize and disrupt business as usual." It's important to note earlier this year, protests at UNC did become violent, as well as they did on many other college campuses across the United States, with police and protesters clashing near the Quad. That was back in late April. 36 people were taken into custody at UNC Chapel Hill. An American flag at the Quad was lowered and replaced with a Palestinian flag, putting the university at the top of attention across the United States in terms of the news cycle. More details on that available at CarolinaJournal.com. Carolina Journal News Time is 5:08. A busy day in North Carolina politics yesterday. Lieutenant Governor and gubernatorial candidate Mark Robinson at the center of a new controversy this morning. Donna King from the Carolina Journal, the editor-in-chief, joins us to recap. Donna, North Carolina politics on the front page of CNN this afternoon.
Absolutely. It's been quite a 24 hours here in North Carolina. North Carolina has been really at the center of the focus, really even in national news, because as a key swing state, it's important for both former President Donald Trump and Vice President Kamala Harris as they make a bid for the White House. So North Carolina, of course, one of those key swing states. And that means that by extension, our gubernatorial race is really getting a lot of attention between Attorney General Josh Stein and Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson. One of the things that we're seeing now, Carolina Journal broke the story yesterday morning, that there was an impending story coming from CNN on Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson. Well, now he has issued a video responding, saying, look, this story is wrong. What the campaign manager told Carolina Journal is that the story is, I believe he used the term, complete fiction. So, we've got multiple sources that talk about the story coming and some of the pressure that the lieutenant governor might be getting to step aside in this race with just 2 months, less than 2 months to go. So, the story itself is really being the focus of CNN, and that is what Mark Robinson denies. He says it is a plant. The story is a plant fabricated by his opponent, Josh Stein. So certainly I think that we're going to be hearing a lot about this through the weekend.
As we kind of give some backstory on the CNN article, they're focusing on some lewd comments that were made on a website back in the early 2000s. But Mark Robinson and online comments, Donna, are not necessarily a new controversy. If anybody turns on any television station across the state, you're going to see ads that Josh Stein has been running using some of Mark Robinson's comments. It seems unfortunate for the lieutenant governor. This is a story that continues seemingly constantly.
Sure. So, well, and that is, I think, what we've seen a lot from the Stein campaign. They've openly said they're just going to basically run Mark Robinson's comments against him throughout this campaign. And that's what we're seeing. I do think that we're missing a key element in this race, and that's policy. That's something we focus on a lot at Carolina Journal and the John Locke Foundation, that we want to know what you're going to do on day one. What are you going to do to bring prices down, make our communities safe? And I think that things like this are really getting in the way of that particular conversation that voters really want to have.
Carolina Journal reported yesterday that high-up sources, even within the Trump campaign, are maybe looking at Mark Robinson, looking at the governor's race here in North Carolina and starting to raise some eyebrows. Can you give us some details on that?
I really can't at the moment. What we're hearing is that he's getting some internal pressure from lots of different places, particularly even, perhaps within his own party, to really examine what happens and moving forward in this gubernatorial race. But he's been clear he's not interested in stepping aside as of right now. Now, of course, on Thursday was the deadline to withdraw. From our understanding, the North Carolina State Board of Elections has extended that deadline to midnight last night. So, we're really kind of in a wait and see. It appears that Robinson says that he's in it for the long haul.
We covered the Carolina Journal poll yesterday morning and talked in great detail about all of the races. Mark Robinson performing at this point 6 or 7 points below former President Donald Trump. Donna, is it accurate to say maybe he's hit a political ceiling around 40 percentage points?
That's exactly right, Nick. I think that's what we're seeing. He has really stuck right about there. There's a brief time earlier this summer where he was going above 40%, but it seems like his support hovers right there at 40%, where you've seen Stein in that poll kind of steadily gain ground. And that undecided start to shrink. And so that's what we're seeing in some of our polls through the summer. But then you also got to be watching all of up and down the Council of State, which are all critically important roles in the governing of North Carolina. Those are all within the margin of error. So this is an incredibly tight race with just a month to go until absentee ballots go out today on Friday. And then our early voting starts in just a month.
The real question, going back to the Carolina Journal story, is this pressure to drop out of the race. Obviously, that deadline has now passed. Do you think that we'll see Republicans across the state of North Carolina, or maybe even Republicans on a national stage, telling Robinson to bow out of this race even though that deadline is passed?
Sure. I mean, anecdotally, not in any given source, I think just from what I've seen, he's got a tremendous following, and there's going to be some heat, certainly, from this story. This is not going to be something that goes away easily, and will certainly follow him well into November. But I also know that people feel strongly about him, and his faith is an important piece of the pie in his appeal. And, I think that what a lot of folks are, we're all sinners, and he is a faithful man, and they feel strongly about him. So those who are supporting him are likely to stick by him. But I do think that it sounds like he's not planning on stepping back.
We'll continue to follow the latest details on that, and you can read more by visiting carolinajournal.com. 5:14 on the Carolina Journal News Hour, News Talk 1110 and 99.3 WBT. Let's see what's going on the roads this morning. Boomer Von Cannon's got the latest look at traffic.
Hey, thank you, Nick. We're looking great on the... Be clear, Nick.
Winter Bowl Show.
This afternoon at 3.
News Talk 1110 and 99.3.
WBT.
5:20. Welcome back to the Carolina Journal News Hour on News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. Also streaming live this morning on the Carolina Journal YouTube channel. 46 days until Election Day, and while it might seem like a little far out in the future, North Carolina at the center of political attention this morning after a CNN story yesterday targeting Republican North Carolina Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson, who has denied involvement in an alleged pornography scandal that was broken by CNN yesterday afternoon. However, the lieutenant governor is vowing to remain in the race to become the state's next governor. CNN published the report yesterday afternoon alleging that Robinson's previous use of a pornography website where he allegedly messaged users in regards to a bunch of lewd content. Some of it so graphic that I cannot repeat it on the air this morning. This, of course, is the latest saga in comments from Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson. The Josh Stein campaign has been running political ads for the better part of 8 months, targeting the lieutenant governor's previous comments, and that controversy continues this morning. The current Attorney General in Josh Stein told Fox News Digital in a statement yesterday afternoon, quote, "North Carolinians already know Mark Robinson is completely unfit to be governor. Josh remains focused on winning this campaign so that together we can build a safer, stronger North Carolina for everyone." However, the lieutenant governor says, well, he's not backing out.
We are staying in this race. We are in it to win it. And we know that with your help, we will.
More details on that coming up a little bit later on this morning here on the Carolina Journal News Hour. A story we have been tracking since Monday. A Wake County Superior Court judge has rejected a group of Republicans' request for a temporary restraining order against North Carolina's State Board of Elections. GOP critics wanted to block election officials from counting the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill's digital identification as a valid form of voter ID for this upcoming election. Judge Keith Gregory issued his ruling around 5 o'clock yesterday afternoon after roughly an hour of oral arguments from lawyers representing the Republican National Committee, the State Election Board, and 2 sets of other groups, the Democrat National Committee and the Affirmative Action Coalition, which is a group that is being represented by Democrat operative Mark Elias. So for the time being, University of North Carolina Chapel Hill digital IDs will be a valid form of ID for the upcoming election. Early voting, well, a lot sooner than 46 days away. That starts on October the 17th. It's 5:23 on the Carolina Journal News Hour. North Carolina continues to be a political hotspot as we head deeper into the 2024 general election. Jeff Moore with the Carolina Journal joins us this morning to recap an event that took place earlier this week in Raleigh. Vice presidential hopeful J.D. Vance was in the state. Jeff, good morning, and you were actually at that rally, correct?
Good morning. Yeah, I was there on Wednesday. Vice presidential nominee for the Republicans, J.D. Vance, senator from Ohio, was in Raleigh. He was at the Union Station, which is a new Amtrak station that was just completed in Raleigh over the last couple of years. I had a pretty healthy-sized crowd and addressed his supporters there. Got a lot of press, obviously, interested in the race, and a lot of Republicans from North Carolina running for office and those not running for office, elected office this time around. Introducing him, getting to work the crowd. We saw Lieutenant Governor nominee, Republican nominee, Hal Weatherman there. He was able to take the podium and issue some comments, as well as some congressional nominees. North Carolina Speaker of the House, Tim Moore, Addison McDowell up in the 6th District. So he had a pretty healthy showing for Vance, and it was his chance to come out after Tim Walz, the Democratic vice presidential nominee, had been in the state recently too. So he came to deliver his message.
His message predominantly focused on the economy. He riddled off the increases in prices for homes, food, gas that have happened over the last 3 years. That's a message that obviously is resonating with North Carolinians. What did you take away from it? Yeah,
so really defining and contrasting the policy sets of the Harris-Walz campaign and the Trump-Vance campaign is what the goal seemed to be for J.D. Vance coming in. He focused very heavily on the economy, jobs in the economy, inflation and prices, And it's a good thing to focus on North Carolina. We have Carolina Journal polling out today that actually reiterates that the top issues for North Carolinians are prices and inflation, that jobs and the economy. And then just behind those is immigration. And that's something that J.D. Vance hit very hard as an aspiring second Trump administration to resecuring the southern border, really emphasizing all the problems that happen, not just for border states, but for states all around the country, for communities all around the country, when you have an open border there, as he was criticizing the Harris administration, the Biden administration, for allowing that to get as bad as it has. So he was really speaking to the heart of a lot of North Carolinians and what they report to care most about. I was able to ask him a question there at the end, too, and he had some nice things to say about North Carolina and what he's learned. He went to a ECU App State football game just last weekend, and so he said it wasn't quite the same as Ohio State and Michigan State because they would have been physically fighting each other there, but he noticed that the passion everybody had and said that it went way beyond college sports, that could tell that people around North Carolina had a passion for the values of the place that they call home, and he really thought that they had common sense in plenty, that there's a lot of common sense policies in the state over the last 10, 15 years that he thought would be lessons to learn and take up to D.C.
Going back to the message itself, if you listen to the rally and listen to his comments, it seemed like everything would be followed up with, Jeff, and Kamala's been in office for 3 years, and Kamala Harris hasn't done anything about this in 3 years, and she's caused this problem over the last 3 years. That's a message. Do you think that resonates with American voters, especially those here in North Carolina?
Yeah, I think for the people in the know that may be more aware of Kamala Harris's record from the Republican perspective, then that's going to resonate for sure. And the people that have only just come to know Kamala Harris over the past 6 to 8 weeks when she's taken this nomination, the job of Vance and Trump is to go out there and actually put her record straight as far as what she's actually done, because there's a real glowing kind of sense and honeymoon period once she got into the race. And so I think that Vance is really taking it to the voters to inform them of what her record has been. There are obviously some very big switches that have gone on in the last 6 to 8 weeks compared to a Kamala Harris in the U.S. Senate and a Kamala Harris as vice president in the Biden administration. So a lot of the things that he called out were things that if she had plans to fix this and that in a Harris administration, he was questioning the same question that many people were asking: why aren't you doing things about that right now from your position as vice president?
Jeff, you mentioned the opportunity to ask a question. That was a big part of Vance's comments as well, is that Kamala Harris has done no more than maybe 2 interviews since she's become the Democrat nominee for president. It looks like he put his money where his mouth is. He didn't just take your question. You said more than a dozen reporters he took questions from yesterday?
Yeah, so from what I understand, he actually spoke to some TV reporters before he took the stage. And then after his remarks were over, he did not skip a beat and did not leave the stage. Some of his handlers had actually arranged for the reporters to have a microphone. I was able to get off the first question and ask him about what his takeaways from North Carolina are. But yeah, there's several reporters asking questions after me, and it's something that we've not really seen at political rallies in the last couple of cycles. We're certainly not seeing that from the Harris campaign. The criticism is that she's not taking interviews, even from friendly sources. And so he opened himself up. They went to local reporters first, so I was able to get the first question off. But then he took questions from the Wall Street Journal, some international outfits. There's some Japanese news media there at this rally today. So they're really trying to go in the opposite direction and talk to as many media sources as possible, probably in hopes of getting their message out across as many media sources to get those voters over to their side.
That's Jeff Moore with the Carolina Journal. You can read more about that by visiting our website, carolinajournal.com. 5:29 on the News Hour, News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. Time for a look at your early morning commute with Boomer Von Cannon.
Hey, thank you, Nick. And please.
and register your appointment.
5:36. Welcome back to the Carolina Journal News Hour, now streaming live on the Carolina Journal YouTube channel. Good Friday morning to you. We continue to track breaking news here in North Carolina as online comments all day yesterday surrounding an exclusive story run by CNN targeting North Carolina's Lieutenant Governor and gubernatorial hopeful Mark Robinson. And reports this morning exclusively over at CarolinaJournal.com indicate that he is under pressure from members of his own party to drop out of the governor's race. Now, if he were to do that, the deadline for that was 11:59 last night, 11:59 p.m. last night. And the lieutenant governor, well, as of this morning, is still in the race. This was all ahead of a CNN report that came out yesterday afternoon claiming that he made lewd and divisive comments on a pornographic website between the years of 2008 and 2012. Some of the comments so lewd and sexual in nature that they are not able to be repeated on the air this morning. Those comments have the lieutenant governor on the defense. However, he says that these claims, well, they're fake.
A story leaked by him to CNN is appearing now. Let me reassure you, the things that you will see in that story, those are not the words of Mark Robinson. You know my words, you know my character, and you know that I have been completely transparent in this race and before.
That's the words of the lieutenant governor on an X post published yesterday, just about an hour or so ahead of the CNN publication. We'll have the full comments from the lieutenant governor coming up for you in less than 15 minutes here on the Carolina Journal News Hour. Pro-Palestinian protesters yesterday afternoon were back at it at the College of Chapel Hill, UNC, as they spray painted the ROTC Armory building, tore down an American flag, put up a Palestinian flag, and vandalized other buildings on campus. The latest edition of college chaos taking place. The group's Students for Justice in Palestine claimed responsibility for the destruction. They said in a statement, quote, "The student movement is protesting UNC's refusal to divest from the apartheid regime and genocidal campaign being inflicted against the Palestinians by the Zionist regime," referring, of course, to Israel. Until UNC ends its complete and total genocide, the student movement shall continue to organize and disrupt business as usual. Earlier this year, UNC became violent when police and protesters clashed near the Quad. That was back in late April. 36 people were taken into custody at UNC. An American flag was taken down and replaced with a Palestinian flag at the time. It's 5:39 on the Carolina Journal News Hour. Money is on everybody's mind. We've got an interesting discussion coming up this morning with economist Dr. Vance Ginn about a decision earlier this week from the Federal Reserve. Vance, thanks for the time this morning. What did we learn from the Fed earlier this week?
Hey, Nick, it's a pleasure to be with you today. And the Federal Reserve, they basically said, you know what, we're going to cut interest rates by 50 basis points after leaving them at 5.25 to 5.5% for quite a while, nearly over a year. Now they said it's time to start cutting interest rates by 50 basis points. So that top rate is now at 5%. As they said that inflation is moderated closer to their 2% level, although it's still substantially higher than that, at about 3.2%. But I think they're also really worried about the labor market as it's continuing to weaken. They keep having revisions downward in the labor market as well. Number of jobs being created keeps going down as far as the revisions. And so I think all of these things come together, Nick, to say, we have a weaker economy, inflation is moderating, so it's time to cut interest rates. But I'll just note that I'm still concerned that inflation is too high. And you talk to most Americans, they see that prices still going up all around them. And so I think it was too early for them to start to cut, but that's at least what they did.
Vance Ginn is our guest this morning. The economy is on the top of a vast majority of voters' minds. We covered the most recent Carolina Journal poll earlier this week. 30% of voters say inflation is their top issue, Vance. This is something that everybody's watching and maybe more, unfortunately, everybody's feeling.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. About 30%, so almost a third felt that. And so this goes along with what we're seeing across the country. And it's unfortunate that it's a situation that was created by too much government spending and a lot of regulations on the supply side of the economy by the Biden administration. And you had the Federal Reserve pump a lot of money into the economy, too much demand chasing too few goods or less supply. You're going to get inflation. And that's exactly what we've seen. So inflation still is running 3%. And one thing I should note is that's lower than the 9% it was a couple of years ago, but it compounds on one another. That, 100 becomes 110, then becomes 120 and so forth. It's not like it went back down. It's just that rate of inflation is slowing closer to the 2% rate that the Federal Reserve would like. And that's why they cut interest rates. But, their balance sheet, Nick, is still around over $7 trillion. And it was only $4 trillion before the pandemic. And so I'm still very concerned that inflation remains too high.
I think many Americans would ask, and they watch business news, they see a headline or they catch something passing on the radio. Okay, interest rates are down. Vance, does that mean that my trip to the grocery store is going to be more affordable? What's the actual impact for the vast majority of Americans with this?
So the idea is that whenever they start lowering interest rates, that people will spend more. They'll get more loans, and businesses will invest more, and so that will grow the size of the economy, and that will help to bring down inflation a little bit more. But the interest rates don't go down simultaneously. They don't go down overnight, especially when the federal government is running trillions of dollars in debt. That's a lot of new debt that's put out there in the marketplace. So interest rates won't come down automatically, and neither will your grocery prices, unfortunately. That will take some time for all the supply chains and everything else to start to bring down some of those costs. But if inflation and the producer prices keep going up the way that they have, I don't see that inflation or even at the grocery store prices will come down anytime soon, as there's a lot of other problems on the regulatory side, the supply chains, and other things that are happening in the economy because of the failures of what I consider to be Bidenomics, of too much government spending, too much money printing, and too high taxes and regulations. That's created this sort of economic situation that we have today.
With all those factors you just described, is it more accurate to say turning the economy around is like turning around a large boat or a large ship? It's a very slow process, and there's a lot of different points in that?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, this is a major economy. We've got 300 plus million people. We've got more than $25 trillion in an economy. So just small little changes here, can't just turn around this big ship. It's going to take some time for that to happen. And one thing that I'm still concerned about is even if we have lower interest rates, we still have a high regulatory inflation and spending environment from Congress and from the Biden administration. Those things aren't changing right away. We do have an election coming up, so there could be some changes there. And so I don't think that the prices and inflation is going to come down, at least in the next few months.
Vance, you cover a lot of this on social media, on a variety of podcasts and YouTube channels. Where do folks find out more details about you and stay in tune with what you're watching?
Yeah. So I have a podcast called The Let People Prosper Show, which you can find on all your major platforms that are out there, YouTube and others. You can also go to vanceginn.com. That's my website. And I have a Substack newsletter at vanceginn.substack.com where you can find the show notes and everything else. And I'm on Fox News and other ones. And it's always a pleasure to be with you, though, Nick. And I'm really excited for your new opportunities.
Vance, thanks so much for the time and the insight this morning.
Yeah, thank you.
5:44 on the Carolina Journal News Hour, News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. Time for another look at traffic with Boomer Von Cannon.
Hey, thank you, Nick. Have a good day.
Captain Pete Callender. Today, noon to 3. WBT.
Your emergency situation station.
5:51. Welcome back to the Carolina Journal News Hour on News Talk 1110 99.3 WBT. I'm Nick Craig. Thanks for spending your Friday morning with us. Tracking some news out of Raleigh this morning, a Wake County Superior Court judge has rejected Republican groups' requests for a temporary restraining order against the North Carolina State Board of Elections. GOP critics wanted to block election officials from counting the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill's digital identification cards as a valid form of voter ID for this upcoming election. Judge Keith George issued his ruling at 5 o'clock yesterday afternoon. That was after about an hour or so of oral arguments from lawyers representing the Republican National Committee, as well as the State Board of Elections, and two sets of interveners, the Democrat National Committee and a group called the Affirmative Action Coalition. The coalition works with lawyers from Democrat operatives Mark Elias's law firm. Gregory compared UNC students who would be unable to vote with the digital ID to convicted felons who have completed prison sentences but can't vote in North Carolina because they have yet to pay all court costs and restitution. He told the group, quote, "I'm not willing to put them in the same box." Gregory also said he didn't believe that UNC students would use digital IDs to attempt to commit voter fraud. So at least for the time being, if you have a child that attends UNC Chapel Hill, they will be able to use their student ID, which is a digital identification card, to vote in this upcoming election. It's 5:53 now on the Carolina Journal News Hour. Back to our breaking story this morning. North Carolina's Lieutenant Governor and Governor hopeful Mark Robinson in national news this morning for an expose that was run on CNN yesterday afternoon. The drama consists around chat logs and comments on an online pornography forum between the years 2008 and 2012. I'll note that's long before Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson was involved in politics. The comments, are very lewd and sexual in nature and divisive in many other cases, have the Lieutenant Governor on the defense. As we look at the story over at CarolinaJournal.com this morning, there was yesterday rising pressure from members of his own party and allegedly other campaigns to drop out of the gubernatorial race. If he were to decide to do that, I'll note he has not, that would have had to have happened yesterday. The deadline was 11:59 p.m. last night for Mark Robinson to drop out of the race. He is not dropping out of the race, and well, he published this video on social media a little bit before the CNN story, talking about the claims and said, well, I'm staying in the race. Here's the Lieutenant Governor.
Hey guys, Lieutenant Governor Robinson and your Republican nominee for governor as well, of course. Well, guys, the news media is at it again. My opponent is at it again. You all have seen the half-truths and outright lies of Josh Stein on these ads over and over again. And now a story leaked by him to CNN is appearing now. Let me reassure you, the things that you will see in that story, those are not the words of Mark Robinson. You know my words, you know my character, and you know that I have been completely transparent in this race and before. Folks, this race right now, our opponents are desperate to shift the focus here from the substantive issues and focus on what you are concerned with to salacious tabloid trash. We cannot allow that to happen. And folks, we've seen this type of stuff in the past as well. Clarence Thomas famously once said he was the victim of a high-tech lynching. Well, it looks like Mark Robinson is too, by a man who refuses to stand on stage and debate me about the real issues that face you. Instead, they want to focus on salacious tabloid lies. We're not going to let them do that. We are staying in this race. We are in it to win it. And we know that with your help, we will. God bless you. And we will see you where? On the campaign trail.
We are staying in the race. We are in it to win it. The words there from Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson. He did sit down exclusively with CNN yesterday, confronted with these claims in their story. Robinson responded by saying, quote, "This is not us. These are not our words, and this is not anything that is characteristic of me. And I'm not going to get into the minutia of how somebody manufactured these salacious tabloid lies. The lieutenant governor doubling down when presented with evidence that usernames, email addresses, and account information similar to other profiles that the lieutenant governor used online in the late 2000s or early 2010s are not in fact him. This is a very fascinating story that we are watching unfold. We sit here just 46 days ahead of Election Day. The most recent poll from CarolinaJournal.com shows Democrat Attorney General Josh Stein with a heavy lead over Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson, some 6 or 7 points as of right now. We know how important the gubernatorial race is here in North Carolina, and we know how important North Carolina is for presidential hopefuls, Kamala Harris, Donald Trump, all of their surrogates. Strap in, folks. It is going to be a very interesting 46 days as we continue to follow everything here on the Carolina Journal News Hour. Well, a great first week for the program. Again, the show does stream live on YouTube. You can head on over to the Carolina Journal YouTube channel and watch along live or catch up with the show on demand. Thanks for spending your Friday morning with us. Thanks to producer Bernie Bowles and all of you for being with us here this week. We are back Monday morning starting at 5 a.m. WBT News is next, followed by Good Morning BT. Have a great weekend. We're back Monday morning starting at 5.
You're clear, brother. Great show, man. I will talk to you, I guess, on Monday.